Welcome to Fantasy Baseball on Netcon, everybody. This is Austin. It is 2026. It's hard to believe, but we are heading into the baseball season. March Madness starts tomorrow, but we care about fantasy baseball. And it's my time specifically of the year to share with you my draft tools. So let's get right into it because everyone is very busy with their time. To access this draft tool, when you are done watching this video, you can either go to the comments and click it there, or you can go to my my fantasy baseball page. Go to YouTube if you're already following me. If you're not, type in fantasy baseball on deck, or obviously click onto the profile, and you'll lead yourself here in the links. So like in this blue link X, there's a portion that says one more link. Click it. There will be a fantasy baseball cheat sheet. It's a Google document. It's a public document. Anyone can access it. My differentiation, how I differentiate myself from other podcasts, from other fantasy baseball websites that are on YouTube, is I give you a front-loaded value to you for free, and that's completely transparent and shows you exactly kind of how I think and how I value things, so that you are always left feeling confident, at least in my understanding of why I think the way that I do and why I love this hobby so much. So if you click on that link, it will lead you here. I'd say every year I spend about probably 40 to 60 hours on this. Obviously I do it for all of you guys, but I do it for myself too. This is something that I actively use while I draft to ensure that I am making educated decisions. And most importantly, again, like the whole value of this is not only am I, putting this in a space so you can so that I can share who I think is best and why, but also while you're in the middle of a draft, you're not making decisions in the moment. Say that you are in the middle of your draft. This is the way that you will kind of use it. Obviously, if you have two monitors, that's the best case scenario. If you are drafting on a phone, you're a loser. Don't do it. If you can, in any way, in shape, or form, draft on a computer, on a desktop computer, you'll actually be able to see all the stats in front of you and have way more information at your disposal than people that are on their phone. So never draft on your phone. That's number one. But then also number two, again, in coming back, because I get down a lot of rabbit holes because I have ADD. I'm 30 years old, but it never goes away. The draft tool, the value of it is you have all of these notes. The players that I've highlighted in green, orange, and red is something I'll get into in a second. But more or less, you're able to walk yourself through the draft. So when you have the timer and it's clocking down, you're never forced to get frazzled and make a decision just to grab somebody without being really, really confident in it. So expanding this back out, I will explain the value in this. So I will start out with the red portion. Okay, so usually in the past, this is my fourth year doing this. It's nuts to think about, but I think this is my fourth year into doing this. And before I even say anything else, I really appreciate everyone's support every single year. This is something that always brings a lot of positivity back to me, and I really appreciate that. So, anyways, the way that I select and the way that I label players that I am drafting, and kind of how I words are freaking hard. What is it? Wednesday at 6:00. I should be a better spot than this, but we'll restart. In this J column, you're going to see either a red 3, an orange 2, a yellow 2, or a green 1. Okay, so starting out with the players that we don't want, these red 3s. Okay. Now, every single color differentiation, numbers mean nothing, but the red 3 means that there are third priority, specifically people that I would not draft. Why I would not draft them, let's talk about health history. So for reasons just even recently was Zach Wheeler. He's currently ranked 64th, and he is dealing with, if you look at all these notes, a thoracic syndrome that affected one of his teammates when he was with the Mets the Dark Knight, the Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey had thoracic syndrome, and it basically ended his career. He hasn't been able to throw a bullpen yet, and this is not new news. He's been dealing with this since the end of last year, very much on his way to a possible Cy Young performance this last season. But into age 35, 36 years old, he's dealing with this all of a sudden new issue that might, inhibit him for the rest of his life, for sure the rest of his baseball life. On top of that, he said last season that this was going to be his last season regardless. He was going to retire at the end of the 2026 baseball season. So for someone who has accomplished everything that he has with nothing else to gain, with a new injury that seemed a little scary, he's just somebody I'm not going to invest into, given that, at the 60 slot, there are so many super duper quality players that are league winners in that spot. So this is a recent situation, like health history wise, something that's new and kind of obscure. And then you go to the players that maybe are just kind of hurt all the time. So we'll go to number 39 and somebody that we're very, very familiar with, Yordan Alvarez. He is one of the scariest players in baseball when he's healthy. I think of all the players that I've watched growing up, though he's on the field for very, very short windows, he was one of the most dominant, pure hitters I've ever watched. But he is never on the field. And I think that's something that I've noted of, I expect 550 at bats, gets you about 140 games at 162 games. That to me is considered a full-time player. 140 games out of 162 to me considers and dignifies as someone as a full-time player. Not ideal. You obviously want as close to 162 as you can, but Yordan, as still a very young person, 2 out of 7 seasons that he has been in Major League Baseball, he has made it to that 140 game mark. And it's just, again, at this point in the 30s, there are other players that we can pencil in, almost Sharpie in, that are going to guaranteed just score more points throughout the year because they're going to be available. If for some reason, ironically, similar, Jacob deGrom, always hurt, right? Last season, he was somehow able to throw out 170 innings and was a top 10 starting pitcher in Major League Baseball. We haven't gotten that out of him in a decade. All of a sudden. And then Chris Sale 2 years ago when he won the Cy Young. Sometimes people are able to figure it out later into their careers and actually have a breakout healthy season. But for someone who has to specifically run all the time on double both knees have been operated on, both shoulders have been operated on. When he runs, there are sprockets and bolts that fly out. He's just someone that I'm not going to invest into for holistic history, health perspective. And then there's already as well, the risk reward scenario. So we'll just stick on Yordan because that's easy. The risk, or Jacob deGrom even, the risk outweighs, the risk doesn't, a risk reward. If the risk outweighs the reward, then it's not worth it. To me, in the top 40 players, I don't want anyone that has any really questionable health history. So for me, the risk outweighs the reward there. Best case scenario, I think that Yordan finishes in the top 10 of batters, but also in the situation, there are pitchers and other batters that I also think are going to finish in the top 10. So the risk, again, is not worth the reward in this place. There are also, if you might get a red mark if you are deemed to be as unsustainable. So, for example, I go to Geraldo Perdomo at number 65. Gosh, he was fun to watch. It's really exciting to see players have a breakout season that in which they kind of come out of nowhere in the age 29 and all of a sudden, make a huge difference for themselves and their team. But that said, Geraldo Perdomo had to more or less be perfect last season to score the amount of points that he did. And I think what's also sets me apart in giving you this tool is that it's not just all of my opinions. I can only include so much information within these note sections to, again, share my thinking process. And the big thing about this page too, and why I started this YouTube page and why I put so much time into it, at least I did a couple years ago, was that my favorite thing, I hate sports analysts because a producer gives them, let's max sometimes 30 seconds to speak on a player and give their reasons as to why or why not they believe in them. And it's just so it's hyperbolic, it's short-sighted, it's all or nothing. And the thing that it always lacks is the data and the transparency of data, the confidence that you get from looking over a spreadsheet and comparing similarly liked players to each other and truly being able to differentiate between the two and say one's going to be more successful than the other. That doesn't exist across almost every single page, which is why I started this in general. If you go to the batter evaluation portion, I also have a starting pitcher evaluation tab. These two things I use for every single player, how I rank every player and how I determine whether they're someone I'm going to invest into. This is not the YouTube video for that. I'm going to go through how I evaluate batters and how I evaluate starting pitchers per tab. That'll be their separate, those will be separate videos. But just for example, just to kind of keep this video short, I'm going to adjust the filter. Okay, 2025 stats. And I'm going to highlight Geraldo Perdomo, and I'll even control find him so that he's locked up there. Okay, so Geraldo Perdomo, he hit 20 home runs, he stole 27 bases. Those are generally the things that you're going to see on a like the things that are going to pop up like when you're drafting players. Ooh, that sounds good. I'll invest into them. And it was great. I mean, but for players that scored the same amount of points, Geraldo had to work 3 times as hard. And let me get kind of deeper into this. So Kyle Raleigh had an incredible season last year. Kyle Schwarber, I hate him to death, but he had a great season last year. And these are the things I kind of want to focus on. With the same number of at-bats, okay, approximately 600 at-bats, and similar number of runs scored, okay, he had a dependent stat. He had to get approximately 30 more hits than Kyle Raleigh and Kyle Schwarber. He had to get approximately 10 more doubles. He had to outpace them in triples, knowing that he's not going to compete against them in the home run category. RBIs, he tried his best to keep up. Obviously, that's a dependent stat. You can't determine how many people are going to be on base when you get up to hit. This is for the batter evaluation video. I'm going to try to not run down rabbit holes. He had a similar amount of walks. Like in Raleigh and Schwarber are known as people that earn a ton of walks. That's one of their better qualities. And he had to strike out over double or less than 40% of the time, 40% less. He had to 100%, 200% less. The math is my math is stupid because I'm an idiot, but I'm also tired. He had to, let's just say Cal Raleigh and Schwarber struck out more than twice the time. So he had to be perfect in that regard from a plate discipline perspective. He had to more than double their output from a stolen base perspective. And he had to way outpace them from an average and an on-base percentage to score approximately the same amount of points. Now, what I want to focus on and what these categories over here, these highlighted categories to the right here are kind of how I compare. Again, this is for the batter evaluation video, but how I compare two similar players to really determine who's more valuable. But independent stats, to me, are total bases and stolen bases. Those are the most important things we can attribute to a player to determine their independent individual value, not how valuable they are from a fantasy perspective over the season and how they benefit from their teammates, but how individually productive are they? These are the players that I'm always highlighting. And though Geraldo Perdomo scored more points than them from across the whole season, he got absolutely, lapped in regards to total bases plus stolen bases. So 303 total bases, even with 30 more hits on the season. Cal Raleigh and Kyle Schwarber had 60 and approximately 50 more total bases and stolen bases than him on the entire season, which means to me, Geraldo, not only did he have to be perfect, not only did he have to make the most out of every situation when he was up the bat, he had to have people on base. When he got on base, he had to have people hit him in. And I think that he is probably one of the luckiest players in baseball, on top of having a record year. Because similarly, if you look at a player that we don't have to mix words about who is more valuable between Geraldo Perdomo and a player like Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt had more hits than Perdomo, had more home runs, more stolen bases. We can all, again, say that Bobby Witt had a better season than Perdomo last year, yet he scored less because he had less opportunities, favorable opportunities. So do I hope that he does well again? Yes, I benefited from him specifically last year. But this is a way that I would determine a player to be a 3, don't draft. Another, example of said thing. And I'm sorry for going so in depth about on everything, but that's the only way I know how to do the show, because more information is better information to me. And then also a dependent player. So if you look across, if I'm going back to this batter evaluation tool, we'll just stick on Geraldo. I'm still picking on him. Jose Ramirez and Geraldo Perdomo had the same amount of at-bats, the same amount of runs scored, the same amount of hits, the same amount of singles, the same amount of doubles, the same amount of triples. Jose had 10 more home runs, which is significant. He had 85 less RBIs, not something he can control. Walked a little bit less, stole more bases, had similar average and on base percentage, but across the whole season, managed again to incur 40 more total bases and stolen bases than Perdomo, and scored 10 points more. So even though Perdomo outpaced him in a couple of the dependent stat categories, he independently was putting himself into a better position constantly on a worse offense. That Cleveland offense last year is the Fighting Jose Ramirez's and a band of misfit toys. Jose and Geraldo scored similarly, but again, I think that Geraldo was completely dependent on situational baseball and then also making the most of it. Did he make the most of it? Yes, but I don't think that it's sustainable. Okay. Now we're finally into the orange section, 17 minutes in. The orange section. So the orange 2s designates essentially the yeah, but category. I don't hate them as a player. I just don't like where they're at in the draft. I would rather have players in that same window over this player at a different position. Or there's something about them that worries me. So, for example, health history, again, kind of a similar topic. If I'm going to go to number 24, ranked 24, we have Francisco Lindor, who had an incredible season last year. He always produces well, especially at the end. And he has a broken hamate bone. I've never had a broken hamate bone. The reporting on it says that because it's such a fine space, such an articulate, intricate space, people kind of heal back from it differently. He's been taking swings, some batting practice, but that's about it as of the last update. And for your second pick, possibly ranked 24. Though I think Lindor, at health is absolutely worth that draft pick in that spot. I'm just at age 32 or 33. I'm just I'm willing to pass on him with that hamate bone. My uncle played semi-professional baseball. He had a broken hamate bone, and he was the whole year I couldn't grip the bat. We need people to be able to grip the bat to be able to get the most out of their plate appearances. So it's just something I'm going to pass on because it's something that worries me. And this early in the draft, I'm just not willing to mess with it. Next situation, if I go just write down a couple slots to William Contreras, I think very highly of William Contreras. I think he had a great year last year. It wasn't necessarily that much of a down year. It's just Cal Raleigh was, the best catcher, one of the best hitters in baseball, period, at a specifically advantageous spot being catcher. Do I think William Contreras has every opportunity to be the number 1 or the number 2 catcher to end the year? Absolutely. If anything, I think that Cal Raleigh doing what he did last year again, or even 75% of that, is highly unlikely. But William Contreras has every opportunity to be the number 1 or the number 2 catcher. However, I think that later in the draft, at number 80, Shea Langeliers at 80 is a player that I also think is going to be, someone who competes for that number 1 or number 2 spot at the end of the year. And obviously I'll share in later videos why I think so, and how I go into the batter and starting pitcher evaluation and determining these things. So do I like William Contreras? Yes, just not in that spot. Or I liked a player at the same position later in the draft just as much. So that was that situation. If I go to number 100, Michael Garcia is a player in other draft formats, other websites. Michael Garcia is eligible at third base, shortstop, second base, and outfield. Almost like his entire value is that he can plug and play anywhere in your roster. Having a guy that can play anywhere in your roster, your roster is flexible. You don't have to worry about, having to scoop things off the free agency pile to make things work partway through the year. Is having one of those players like a DJ LeMahieu, a couple years before he retired, having someone that can fill into those spots, that produces just a little bit less than their peers in those primary positions, is something that I often am willing to invest into, because again, that people are going to get hurt. You just don't know who, and to have one of these players, it just sets you up in a better spot. So Michael Garcia, I'm putting to orange 2. He's more of a volume guy. He should play every single day in the leadoff spot for the Kansas City Royals, but without those extra player position eligibility slots, I don't think he's worth it at 100. Now in CBS, again, he's eligible 4 spots. He's worth probably grabbing in, when you're in the 80s, just because, again, roster flexibility is super advantageous. Now, and then finally, sorry guys, I'm all over the place. I've actually done this video. This is the second time I've done this, because the first time I did it, the website, I forgot to click the allow sound button. So it was just 30 minutes of me talking on mute, which was kind of disheartening. The other reason I will set someone at orange is I like the player, but they lost their spot in the batting order due to trades or whatever. So Colton Cowser, I think, is a player that will at some point in his career hit 40 home runs. Everything about him makes me excited for his future. However, he can't stay healthy. And with the additions of Taylor Ward from the Angels and Pete Alonso from the Mets, he is no longer hitting in the top 5. He is now like a 7-hole hitter, which means he has to work 1.5 times as hard at the bottom of the lineup, surrounded by, lesser players to compete. And that's something that no player is ever able to overcome. Like Andy Pages had a really good year last year, but can't compete because he's at the very bottom of the lineup. You're just not getting enough volume and opportunities to keep up with your peers. So the rule with batters, especially, if they don't hit between the 1 and the 5 slots, more specifically, I want them between 1 and the 4 slot. 1 and the 5, that's the cutoff. Any player that's outside of the 1 and the 5 spot just isn't getting enough value to compete, and they can't be owned. So that's something that I'm pretty hard fast set on, and that is proved to be pretty true over the years. But again, and it's measurable. They played they played 150 games, and it barely got over 530 at bats, because they're at the end of the batting order. They are just going to incur 70 less at bats across the year than other players, and they just simply can't keep up. So another situation while someone would be like, I love Colton Cowser, but he's not hitting in the top 5, so I can't have him. Now, finally, the players that we want to focus on the green. There are situations where, again, I see Sal Stewart. He is green with no like bold tags or anything. He is simply a player that I think is going to produce for a number of reasons. Obviously, I give my reasoning in most of these player slots, but a player that I think you can be confident in. Essentially, like a player that's a very good value for where they're at. They're an independent player in regards to production, and they meet all of their list of criterias needs that I want for a batter and or a pitcher. Now, if I go to the next tier of greens, there is a green section, but there'll be a bolded player. If I go to 10, is Ketel Marte. Ketel Marte missed a lot of the beginning of the season last year, which is really frustrating given how early we were taking him. But if you look at the names, there are some names that are bolded compared to not. And not only am I like confident that Ketel Marte is going to be a productive player in this situation, he is not only going to be really, really productive, but he's a great value. He's going to be someone that you want to get in that spot because of position scarcity, which is at second base. I mean, second base my whole lifetime has always sucked. I've never been happy about second base. It is the throwaway position seemingly every year. Somehow this season it got worse. Second base is Ketel Marte in the first round pick slot. A whole pile of shit. Jazz Chisholm at the 68 slot, and then a mountain before you get to Matt McLean. And there's no one, essentially, there's like almost no one else that I have any interest in for the entire draft. So when I have a player bolded, like if I'm in the spot where it's like, shoot, do I think that Bobby Witt's going to score more than Ketel Marte for the entire year? I think Bobby Witt's going to outpace him by a little bit. But can I find another shortstop later, like anywhere else in the draft that's going to compete similarly to at least Marte? I think so. If I don't grab Marte there, I know for a fact that there's no one else that's going to compete in that slot. No chance of anyone else competing. So in this example, I'm specifically looking to grab a player because he's the only one that means anything at that position. So bolded player, that's one reason for a bolded player. The other one, there is very common production. Okay, so there's another situation where like I think that a player is really extremely valued. Not only do I like them where they're at, I think that they're just like the metrics that we're focusing on are not the metrics we should be focusing on. They're most likely a younger player that plays for a smaller market. ESPN, however their computers put together these lists, they suck. And that's the whole reason why we play ESPN, because we take advantage of the lack of information and lack of intuition that goes into putting these lists together. So if I look at 194, who is Michael Busch for the Chicago Cubs, and to admit, I didn't know a ton about Michael Busch coming into this preseason. He's someone that I had to dig into to get up to date on what that means. Wait, 194. Sorry, 194. Okay. Michael Busch at the first base slot. There's a lot of first basemen. He's the 17th ranked first baseman. He's getting towards the end of the draft, ranked 194. What I want to focus on and what I kind of want to share is that if I go to my batter evaluation just to compare the two, and I toggle the project 550 at bats per year section. So this is how, okay, I know that all of this is maybe new to you, but if I want to compare a player like Ketel Marte that missed a portion of the season last year, or we'll just stick on this if I want to compare a player like Michael Bush, who didn't play a full amount, to a player who did play the full year, this is how I do that. So the projected 550 at-bats. 550 at-bats to me, again, is approximately 140 games. That is someone who is a full-time player to me. In a vacuum, if all the players only got 550 at-bats, how would they produce compared to their peers? So what I'm focusing on right here is at 194 with 550 at-bats, Michael Bush is just as productive as Rafael Devers, who is ranked at number 89. So if you're telling me I can grab the same position player at 194 to a player that we know has been in our lives seemingly forever and is still somehow not 30 yet, at number 89 in Rafael Devers, that's why they're bulleted. I think that across the entire season, Michael Bush got to play, let's say, like 130 something games, 120 something games. Rafael Devers played 163 games. He got traded. He actually played one more game than usual. 163 out of 162 games last year is what Rafael Devers played. And not many people have probably ever done that in history. But this is how I determine, again, comparing two players that played at different amounts throughout the season. So, and I think this whole time I've been blocking the Devers stats. But again, Devers played 163 games. Bush played 130-something games, 40-something games. But how can we compare what their values will be comparatively for across the whole season? Michael Bush should play every single day this year at the top of the lineup and should produce similarly. So that's kind of another reason why a player will be bolded. So to run through this just one more time, when I minimize this, when you're in your draft, if you have just a laptop is so much better than a phone. A laptop with an extra monitor, having two screens is the absolute best. But if you're limited to one screen, you put this draft tool with half the screen. You put your draft itself as half the screen, and as you're scrolling through, you're doing your draft. You're looking through players. You're queuing players off of your this list that are labeled green, so that your queue is built. If something was to happen and you had to auto pick, it's grabbing someone in order that you have deemed as someone that you like. Obviously, if there's players that you disagree with, if you think that there's someone on this list that is labeled orange or God forbid they're labeled red that you absolutely have to have, do that. I mean, the whole point of this is supposed to be fun. If you're a Washington Nationals fan and you would rather die than watch James Wood get drafted to somebody else who doesn't necessarily care about him, then take James Wood, reach for him. You want this to be fun, but the whole point of this draft tool is that you are prepared, and this is not a stressful situation because all of the answers are already here. Similarly, if I expand this page, the last tab I want to talk about for just a second is this draft planning sheet. So what I've done is, if you're in the middle of the draft and two of your people, let's say you were going to get a shortstop, and your shortstop at round. So I'll restart. All of the players that I've deemed as green, I've counted and I've included into a little bracket that shows you who's available in what rounds. So in round 1 through 20, there are 15 players I consider to be draftable. In rounds 20 through 40, there's only 4. In 41 through 60, there's only 2. However, if you're in 41 through 60 and you were planning on getting one of those two shortstops, I think either Mookie Betts or Elly De La Cruz, and you miss, and someone takes your player just before your pick comes up, oh shoot, okay, I need to scroll down to the 80 through 100 slot because the next shortstop that I want is there. I can put that to the side. I know that I don't need to worry about shortstop. It got taken from me. I don't have to stress. I'm going to look at other positions. I know that even though my shortstops got taken, in that slot. I know that I have some good starting pitchers coming up, a first baseman, a second baseman. Oh, I need a second baseman. Of course, I didn't get Keltal Marte earlier in the year. I'll transition to second base. You always have a plan. So I suggest that you copy and paste this into like your own Google Drive, own Excel sheet, and kind of adjust it to meet like who you want. And these notes over here, obviously, I'm per round and per second round, third round, fourth round pick, and per round, I'm kind of listing out what players I'm most likely going after in the beginning. So, anyways, that's the draft tool. It's something I put a lot of time into. I would love to know what everybody finds most valuable in this space. How I can make the tool better. I'm a one-man show. No one else helps me with any of this stuff. So, it's something that I want to make valuable, and I want it to be as good as possible. So if there's any suggestions, let me know in the comments. I'd also like to know where people are from. I have people from Australia and England and Germany that are constantly back and forth communication to me through the comments, which is really, really cool. So let me know where you're from. Let me know how the sheet can be better. I had a lot of people reaching out to me. I have a burden complex. I do not. This is me not asking for money. I am asking you to follow me because that's helpful. But there's so many people that reached out that said, "Hey man, I can tell how much time you put into this, but also this draft tool helps me win my league every single year, and I just feel obligated to give you a couple bucks because I wouldn't have had the team that I had without you." Because they forced me to do this because I had so many people reaching out saying, "Hey, what's your Venmo? I've listed it. Don't feel like you have to give me anything. This is a free tool on purpose. But if you feel compelled to be extra nice, then I really appreciate it." Again, I put like around 40, 60 hours in this thing. So if you do feel obligated to give me a couple bucks, then here's my information for that. But as I'm done panhandling, because that's always an uncomfortable feeling. Just want to again say to you guys, thank you so much for all of your support. The baseball season's right around the corner. It's my favorite time of the year. I know that March Madness is starting tomorrow, but best of luck. Let me know what you guys think, and more videos to come. So yeah, specifically how I evaluate batters and how I evaluate starting pitchers are going to be in my next videos that I post. So again, check out the tool. It's in the comments or on my webpage, and let me know. But until then, see you later. Bye, guys.